No, again, I know a lot of people were upset with us. Don't give up on us that quick. We wouldn't give up on you. We get some crazy-ass emails. And we don't turn our back on you. We support you.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Westworld Edition. My name is Roger Roper, also known as The Raj. Alongside me, I've got my two co-hosts, Big D.
Good evening.
And Gene Lyons.
Happy Halloween.
And this is our deep dive podcast episode where we review the week's episode of Westworld. We are on episode 5, midway through the season. And guys, before we dive into this episode, I want to talk a little bit about some of the feedback we received on our Instacast and maybe just address some of the issues that we saw on Twitter. So just right off the bat, Gene, I don't know how there was any confusion between our audience or the people who really listen to us week in or week out. We preface this, if you go back and listen to the first episode we ever released, it was just Big D and I, and we said, listen, we think the show is going to be fantastic. But if it's not, if there's situations where plot points don't make sense or certain situations kind of go off the rails, we're going to be honest. We're going to talk about it. That's our mission, is to stay honest. And even last night during the Instacast, which is an emotion-filled, adrenaline rush, immediate after reaction. That's the whole point of the Instacast. It's our immediate take on it without taking a day to digest it, doing a second watch. Gene, you even mentioned to the audience that you might upset some people. You don't want to lose any audience, but you are not necessarily a fan of this episode. So I want to give you the opportunity to address that right now to the audience.
You know, you said it best on Twitter when you said that, you know, we feel like this show is better than 99% of what's out on television. I stand by that. I agree wholeheartedly. For me, I look at what they've established in the first few episodes. I look at the wealth of storylines that could pour out of that and the outstanding cast that they have and what they're capable of. And I just ask myself, is this show living up to it? There is no pleasing me sometimes, but I'll point out a couple shows that I thought were absolutely perfect. So, The Wire, Deadwood, shows like that, Carnival, were essentially flawless. You watch them, you can watch them. I challenge anybody to point out issues with those shows that made them poor writing or heavy-handed. In this case, I really feel that Westworld is doing so well that I was shocked to see some of the parts where they fell short. And again, we're only 5 episodes in, so there is plenty of time for the show to redeem itself or have plot twists and points that explain points that I pointed out and go, you know, like maybe if they go, you know what, it was all a TV show to begin with. It's a TV show about a TV show. And I go, oh, well, then that makes sense. Bad writing. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, I went back after, today's kind of feedback, and 2 things I took from it. Number one, it's great that there's such a passionate fan group of the show. You know, they jumped up trying to protect the show and trying to defend it, and we're kind of coming at us like we were harsh. I went back and listened to the cast, and I don't think we were harsh. Today, I don't necessarily agree with everything that I said, because when you're doing a full, immediate podcast right after you turn off the TV, if we polled all of our listeners and people who watched it, their opinion would be completely different immediately after than it would be the next day. So we're also holding it, like you said, to a different standard. I realize something that I'm doing that's affecting it is that the first take through it, I'm taking some notes, which I think is a mistake. Today I went through and just watched it straight through without taking any notes, and I absorbed it and I felt a little different about it. So I think next week I'm going to try with the notes free first time through. But the whole point of this is we don't want to be the cast that just slurps the show. You don't want to hear, oh boy, like, the after shows that are telling you how great it was, how everything was perfect, because you're not going to agree with that. You're not going to always agree with us. If we tell you it's a great cast and you think it's shit, write us. That's the whole point. We're your friend. There's 4 of us sitting down. It's the 3 of us and you, and we're shooting the shit about the show. If you disagree, tell us. If we disagree, don't take it as a personal insult, because it's not. We just feel free with you to have an open and honest conversation.
And even at the point of disagreeing, we're disagreeing with each other. I mean, there's no unified voice on this show. There are three of us, and if we all agree, then we could just say, hey, you know what, Dick, you've got the show this week, and have a good time. We'll see you next week. The three of us drastically disagree on a lot of things. I mean, pre-show planning, show notes, afterward, we talk it out, and we disagree on whether or not there's multiple timelines. Who's a host and who isn't. We disagree on with quality of writing and lots of other points. So, I mean, again, you're going to find somebody to agree with on the show, and you'll probably find somebody to disagree with too. I happen to be, really tough to please.
Just to give you an example of how true that is, little spoiler here coming up. We have a actress from the show who is going to be doing a specific cold open for us. We've reached out, and an actor from the show is going to do a cold open. Getting the three of us to agree on 3 sentences that we want them to read was a 45 text, 2-hour conversation. So we're always on different pages. But stay tuned, because we'll have a special cold open here coming up hopefully in a week.
Yeah, so I think the bottom line is, for me, until the Westworld producers start paying us or start wanting us to be shills for the show, we're going to keep it real. We're going to keep it honest. We're not going to hardwick this bitch. We're going to stay true to the name. And there was someone who wrote us in and gave us a really nice tweet and said, listen, I'm glad that you're being honest and open about certain points of the show. I appreciate that. It's a breath of fresh air. So that's who we want to be.
And one thing, keeping it real does not mean that we're right.
No.
Okay.
No.
Keeping it real means we're telling you what we think. Now, if you have a problem and you want to say, hey, you guys are full of shit, you're wrong, I would love it. Tell us why we're wrong. When Gene went off, I felt that his feelings for why he felt that way were articulated very well. So if you think we're full of shit and we're off base, please tell us. We would love it.
We dedicate an entire episode to reading your emails and your theories and your analysis. It's called Westworld Telegraph. We do that every Thursday. Send an email, hosts@ShatOnTV. All right, boys, we're 7 minutes in. I thought we figured we'd get that addressed. The rest of the episode is all about the deep dive into Westworld. And like always, we don't do what other podcasts do. We don't go in a linear fashion. We don't rehash plot points. We just bring up questions that we want to talk about that was imperative to the episode. The first one is, it was the title. So we always kind of start off with the title because there's usually some sort of meaning behind that and it ties into the episode. This week's episode title was Contrapasso. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Is it Contrapasso?
Who's the most Italian in the group? Would that be you, Big D?
No.
No,
my father was half Italian, but no.
Yeah, I think that makes you the most Italian.
I think you're closer. Isn't Mediterranean? You're more Mediterranean than the rest of us.
Yeah, but the Romans and the Persians, classic enemies.
But
anyway, I think you're pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah. So the title of the episode refers to the concept that everyone will someday be punished in proportion to the sins. Gene, you're our literary expert here. This, I believe, comes from Dante's Inferno, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So the Divine Comedy opens with Dante's Inferno, and in that there's this concept that there's an ironic or fitting punishment for every sin. And oddly, I thought this was, interesting. It brought up a lot of points. So first of all, if we're talking about the classics, you could even go back an episode to episode 4, where the woodcutter, bashes his own head in, right? And what is he doing? He's gazing at the stars, right? If you go back through Catholicism, that's a sin, right? Astronomy, that's a sin. And in Dante's Inferno, those who looked to the stars had their heads twisted backwards so that they couldn't even see where they were going. So, this woodcutter is basically, could be seen as a symbol of paying for that sin of looking for the stars by bashing his own head in, right? So that he can't see anymore. But also the irony of, if you go a step further, as we find out later in the show, that he's got a satellite uplink, it becomes very, very profound.
But my question here is, what are they defining as sin? Because free will is obviously one of the cornerstones of the park, where sexual deviance is accepted, violence is accepted. What in the park would constitute a sin?
There's no sin in terms of humans, right? Humans are allowed to indulge in their sins. The hosts, though, are not allowed to stray from their narratives. So if you look at Dr. Ford as a godlike figure, you look at the woodcutter in the example that Gene just talked about, the fact that he's looking up at the stars, he's disobeying Ford's narrative to stay on his path. And maybe they find out that, he's using his GPS laser uplink to steal corporate things. So Dr. Ford is going to make sure that he pays for his sins by bashing in his own head.
I think this is less about the sins of the host and sins of the guests. I think this is the sins of the creator. I think this is the basis of who has created the park, who has created life, who has manipulated lives, who has total control. Ford's playing God over not only just the entire park, but he says he's created a world. And the disregard for humanity and for any kind of sense of decency or any kind of humility that he shows is staggering. So I think he has some debt to pay. If he is going to pay, in some form of purgatory that's comparable to his sins, I think he's got a bad day coming.
Well, when you think about the word purgatory, right, and you think of the way that the hosts are in this endless narrative loop that they cannot escape, they're doing, they die the same way day after day. They have to encounter the same situations day in and day. That in itself, the host narrative is purgatory itself, correct?
But how can you sin without free will? If you sin because it's programmed in you, that is not free will.
But I believe the idea of purgatory is that you're just caught in this, you're there. You're not really advancing into heaven. You're not really in hell. You're doomed to a life of doing the same thing day in and day out.
Here's my problem with that. The hosts don't realize they're in a loop. Without the exception of Maeve and a few other ones, they're unaware they're in purgatory. Yes, we know they are, and they're suffering, indignities and they're being violated daily. To them, it's just an average day that they're reliving. Now, once they become aware, hell yeah, then it's purgatory.
Got it. Okay, perfect. So is there anything else that we want to talk about the idea of Contrapasso or what that might mean as it relates to this episode or the series at all?
No, I just think we see in the trailers of what's coming up. And I like that the show is ramping up fast. We're going 0 to 60. It looks like there's going to be a debt to be paid really soon. And it looks like it's going to be the employees or the creators in the park that are going to pay it. So I think that's where we're headed to, and rightfully so.
I'll throw out one question. So you mentioned the idea of paying for the sins in the creator, right? We learn in the episode, and we'll talk about this next, that Dr. Ford and Arnold were the creators of the park, seemingly, based on what we know so far. But an accident happened with Arnold, and Arnold died. Is Dr. Ford going to be paying for his sins? Like, if there's something nefarious that went down with Arnold's death that Dr. Ford was a part of, is he paying for his sins?
I think in an early episode, whether it was 1 or 2, in Gold Mesa, Teresa Cullen's having a conversation with Sizemore, and she says that he's going to chase his demons right over the edge. I think that there was foreshadowing there. I expect that he's going to become victim to his hubris and to his history, and it's just a matter of time to see it. I think, again, with an actor of the caliber of Sir Anthony Hopkins and a character as big as Ford, it's going to be spectacular. Maybe Superman 3.
I agree. We also learned, I think one of the big points was, out of his own mouth, Ford says Arnold was the creator. It's no longer a partnership. Ford lays it on the table. He was there, but Arnold was the creator. So either that Ford's been, riding the coattail, that he took away the true creator, whether he killed him, whether he made him disappear, and he's been, living the life as the creator of the park and enjoying it. I think there's going to be more to come that we're going to see, hopefully, what really went down.
So was Dr. Ford, the whole Greyhound story that he was talking to Bill down in cold storage, was that a story about Dr. Ford's life? Or was that a story about Arnold's life? Because if I relate it to Contrapasso, the idea that when you accomplish your life goal, you sit back and you're like, well, what the hell do I do now? So was he talking about himself, or was he talking about Arnold?
I think he was talking about Arnold, that Arnold had spent so long. Because there's one of the things that Dr. Ford has, he lacks any humility. So I can't imagine him seeing a flaw within himself to be that advanced that he could take that ownership. Subtly, he's talking about either Arnold and then also Dolores. He's talking about a lot of the hosts that he questions throughout the episode, where he asks Dolores, have you dreamt of something bigger? Would you be good? Would you be bad? Teddy. But in the end, I believe he's talking about Arnold. He's questioning that Arnold had loved the host. He had loved them more than man. He had spent his entire life wanting them to be free and create this artificial intelligence. Then once it happened, he either didn't know what to do with it or it quickly got out of hand. So the parallels, I think, are unquestionable.
So speaking of humility and being able to point your own flaws, the idea of separate timelines, guys. Now, I was very passionate on the Instacast last night that I was not on the idea train going into separate timeline. I've gotten off. I've taken my luggage. I've packed up. I've gone home. However, upon some proof points that was delivered to me via email and in reading some recaps, which I try not to do, and upon a second viewing of the episode, it seems as if there was a lot of different things that the writers and the producers try to shove in this episode to prove we're on separate timelines. Guys, your thoughts?
I think just the logistics alone. If you have Lawrence strung up in a tree, he's had his throat slit, to get him physically back to maintenance, get him repaired, back in the park, and then onto his El Lazo, which I think it's cute in Spanish, it's the loop, to get him back in roll into the park that quick, I think would be difficult. But what I really think is we're heading towards some crescendo. There's going to be some giant event that we can see at the end of the season. If we are on one linear path, at the end of the season, it's almost going to be just like a dead end. Boom, it's going to come to a stop, and then where do we go? If you're running dual timelines, this event can happen without disrupting the flow of the story. If we learn that, say, either Logan and William are in the past and that led to some event and they get killed off, we still have the current storyline with the Man in Black moving forward. If it is one linear path and we hit this wall, season 2 is going to need almost like a reboot where they're going to come back in, new characters, we're going to kind of ramp back up. I don't think they would do that.
So some of the points that were pointed out to me that I took note of, you mentioned Lawrence. So in the episode, we see Lawrence being drug up by his feet. We talked about on the Instacast. His throat slit and the blood is drained from him so that he can refill Teddy and keep moving on his path. Then we see, similarly, the host, Lawrence, as now El Lazo. Now, people are pointing to that and saying, well, there's no possible way he could be repaired that quickly and then put back out and now back in in the narrative. But for the people like myself who aren't necessarily totally convinced that you're on a separate timeline, let me present these proof points to you. Number 1, a day goes by in between Lawrence being throat slit and when Logan and William meet El Lazo. A day goes by. We see the technicians down underneath the tunnels of the park. They're pretty quick. When a host comes back in, they wash them, patch them up, get them back up. We've seen that with Maeve. So is there the possibility that they just patched up Lawrence and put him back in his narrative as the bandit El Lazo?
Here's what I have a problem with that is that he's an established character already, right? They're going to see El Lazo. And so it seems very strange that in a park that has literally thousands of guests and hosts, that they would have this shortage where they had to have this one host play both roles and patch him up that quickly. He's already a known thing. They're going to see him. So it makes sense if there's 2 different timelines that he's serving a specific function in each. But not, and again, if you go back to Abernathy and several other hosts, it's a known fact that they fulfill roles in certain time slots, but they're a specific role at a specific time.
But when we're first introduced to the character of Lawrence, Man in Black seemingly knows him, and he's being strung up by the posse, right? So we know that Lawrence is a bandit. He has people underneath him, right? And the posse has captured him. They're going to hang him. He cuts him down. He says, hey, Lawrence. The Man in Black, because he's gone through all the narratives, the argument that I'm making here is that the Man in Black has gone through all the narratives. We see William be introduced to when he is on the train with El Lazo. He says, by the way, call me Lawrence. I think possibly the Man in Black has already been on that same train mission, video game situation. Like, he just already knows to call him Lawrence when he sees him being cut down, being hanged. I possibly think, guys, there's still one timeline that we're seeing here.
Hold on. So what does any of that have to do with multiple timelines? If Lawrence, the character, has been playing that character for 30 years, then obviously the Man in Black could have encountered him along that storyline 5 years ago, 10 years ago. That doesn't say anything.
Taking it a step further, if you believe in the William is the Man in Black theory, he's known him that long. They met on this mission. That he wants him to call him Lawrence. Do you hear anybody else call him Lawrence?
No, I get that, but the Man in Black has been coming to the park for 30 years.
So you're talking about two timelines.
No, the same timeline. They're on the same timeline. It's just the Man in Black has been there for longer times than William has.
You're not validating your fact. Say that William is the Man in Black.
Okay. Which seems to be the other part of the proof point that there's two timelines going on here.
That would explain how he knows his name is Lawrence.
But William doesn't know his name is Lawrence yet.
That's the whole point. That's the origin of him learning it.
What you're saying is we're seeing the Man in Black learn El Lazo's name in real time. That's what you're saying.
Bingo, light bulb goes off. Yes.
My question to this is, why are we not seeing older hosts in the William and Logan timeline then? Why are we seeing the same advanced hosts? Wouldn't you assume that the hosts, if it's 30 years later, wouldn't you assume that the hosts that are in the Man in Black timeline would be more advanced, and when would there be actual real robots that we see in flashbacks of Dr. Ford in the answer. William and Logan? Okay, tell me the easy answer. Okay, I want to believe, guys. I'm the character. I'm Scully. No, who's the X-Files? I'm Mulder in the X-Files. I want to believe.
So we now transport ourselves to the 1800s. We bring back a ranch farmer from the 1800s. We show him computers from 1985 and computers from 2016. Will he be able to determine the difference between those two technologies? To him, they are the same. 30 years of advancement in the AI, it would be imperceivable to us, any difference. So other than the first generation of hosts, which were mechanical, after they went biological, you're talking the difference between a laptop today and a laptop in 2 years. Yeah, there's a big difference in power and capabilities, but on the overall grand scheme, there's not that much of a difference that you would see.
I also want to reiterate that I'm not necessarily a subscriber to the William is the Man in Black theory, but I am saying that I don't believe that William and the Man in Black, as depicted on screen on the show Westworld, exist at the same time. Either they're the same person on a 30-year stretch, or they're two different people who never met.
I concur.
Okay. The only other thing that I will say could lay credence, and we there's no proof point yet of the separate timelines. Lawrence is pumping dead hosts full of nitroglycerin. Where are those hosts going? Are those part of a narrative, or is there some sort of rebellion happening with the hosts?
See, I brought up this fact. When we see the Man in Black with the scalp maze, that has the maze on the inside of Kissy's scalp, it seems like it's hidden. In this episode, it's everywhere. It's branded on the top of the coffins. It's on playing cards. It's all over the place. There's talk with El Lazo about a rebellion. We're led to believe it's something to do with a narrative. I get the vibe that there is no way that this is a narrative. They're pumping that body full of nitro, knowing that is going to go. Where's it going to go, that body? It's going back below to get repaired by the techs. The techs are going to cut that open. That's a bomb that they're sending back to the makers.
Another point on that, too, is Lawrence says that it's going to the front, that they're going to the front. So now you could look at that as a war effort, and there's some sort of narrative with the war, or the front is the point where there's going to be the battle between the hosts and the tech.
How often are they shipping dead bodies to the front? You ship dead bodies back from the front. You send them to the rear so they can get processed and brought home. There's no reason to send a body to where the fighting's going on.
And if you look at Pariah, as Logan says, is basically the brainchild of Arnold, right? That this is allowed to exist because of him. And he says that this part of the park is hemorrhaging money, right? It's expensive because instead of having these strict Sizemore narratives that are, controlled by focus groups and cost effective, this is the wild part of the Wild West, right? You're getting farther out there. The stories get bigger and weirder and make less sense, okay? So if you look at it from that way, it would make sense that a rebellion would have its genesis at the point where Arnold's influence was the strongest.
Yeah, it's raw out there. We already see that the hosts out there don't honor the one rule that you don't hurt people. They're choking out Logan. It's raw. They're on the edge. They're pushing the boundaries of what's okay, so it's easy to expect that they'd be pushing it on a much larger front and trying to rebel against the maker.
But doesn't it seem, though, that Sweetwater is less populated than Pariah? Pariah seemed like that's where all the cool shit was happening. Like you talked about on the Instacast, Big D. Like if you're going to go to Westworld, you want to go to Pariah because that's where all the fun shit's happening. You have giant orgies with women that are painted gold. You've got the Confederados. You got all these really cool missions. You got people banging in the in the stagecoaches right when you walk in. You've got topless vendors selling their goods, literally and figuratively right there on the side. I mean, that's where people want to go in Westworld, it seems like.
It seems like this is a place that's exempt from the narratives or the overall control. There's no way that Stubbs is sitting there getting an okay for pyrotechnics. There's too much going on. They're too compact. There's too many people there. It's almost like this area is off on its own and just running wild.
So if you think this is truly a rebellion, if you think this is actually the Lawrence host doing something off his narrative, pumping dead bodies of hosts full of nitroglycerin and sending it back underneath to the techs, is this the incident that's happening that we hear about that happened 30 years ago?
It very well could be. I likened it to during World War II where bomber pilots would write the names of their girlfriends on the bombs, or they would paint on the messages. The brand of the maze on the casket, only his had a brand, was a message. So yes, this is the final blow or the beginning of the war.
One thing that was brought up on my second watch, as well as when William and Logan are entering into Pariah, you mentioned that Logan says the park is hemorrhaging money. He gives the backstory. He's telling kind of William kind of things that he knows, right? That the company is in the process of looking at buying out Westworld. It was started by a partnership. There's a story that it was two guys, Ford and Arnold, and he says this, there's no pictures to confirm that Arnold even existed. The lawyers have looked into it. They can't find any proof that Arnold existed. The only picture that we see so far in the past 5 episodes, Dr. Ford showed Bernard, hey, this was me and Arnold. But if we look closely, and it was given to us by our listener Manny, the person that was in the picture, we saw his head on a host, like it was a head host. So could Arnold really be Dr. Ford? And Dr. Ford, the picture that he showed Bernard, was just of Arnold? Like the host, him next to a host? Go with me here. I know I'm going a little tinfoil here, guys. I know I'm going a little beautiful mind, but stick with me here. When he talks to Bernard and he says there's truth and there's legend, and when one of that happens, the legend gets written down. Could Dr. Ford really be Arnold, and the Arnold that he said was really kind of the host, and the host kind of went off on his own, and Dr. Ford had to put him down. He had to kill Arnold because Arnold actually found consciousness. He actually found sentience.
Yeah, the only evidence we have that Dr. Ford has assumed some other, role, some other personality, or somebody else's life. He tells Dolores, he says, "Do you remember the man I used to be?" That's a question that he obviously hasn't physically changed, but possibly the life that he is living has changed, and thus he assumed the role of Arnold. That's very possible. That's the only piece of evidence we have.
Yeah. So I just to put a bow on the 2 timelines, I'm going to go on record here, boys, and I'm going to say I'm open to the idea. I'm open to the idea that we're on separate timelines. So Big D, you actually bring up a good point. When the conversation that Dr. Ford has with Dolores is a big moment in the episode. And there's a couple things that I wanted to discuss. Ford seems to cling to Dolores because, according to him, Dolores is the only one who was there when Arnold died. Dolores seems to have been created by Arnold, and there might be a distinction between other hosts and Dolores. So let me ask you, what is the connection that Dolores has to the Arnold character in Westworld?
Well, we asked this in the Instacast. Why would he keep her around? If she's a threat to him, and she seems to be a destabilizing force in the park and in whatever Dr. Ford wants. I said, why would he keep her around? And you guys were, oh, yeah, she's his only tie to the past. That's not always a good thing. He's extremely passive-aggressive to her. He's talking to her, he's condescending, and he's squeezing her hand. He's not liking what she's saying. And when she has that little glimmer, almost like the light bulb's going off, and she said, are we old friends? You can see he's threatened by it. So I get the vibe that he doesn't keep her around just for nostalgia. He needs her for something. She serves a key function in his plan and in the park. Otherwise, he'd get rid of her like every other host.
But he does seem to have an affinity for older things in the park, in the sense that he still goes down with old Bill and hangs out in cold storage. And who wants to spend time with like a creepy animatronic host that just keeps repeating drinking chants about the lady in the white shoes and has these corny phrases that he just keeps saying?
You're asking that question to the wrong person, because I am psyched to buy that brand new Nintendo that they're redoing the NES for like $50 with all the original games. Yes, I like the nostalgia as well. But if the nostalgia is threatening me like Dolores is, I'm sorry. I'm not putting that Nintendo in my entertainment system.
But I think that's just it. I mean, Ford makes the point of talking to Bernard about, you weren't here. How long have you been here? You weren't here for that. He's got a distinct need to connect to the past through Bill, through Dolores. I think that we are giving short shrift to his nostalgia and his sentimentality.
What we found out is Dolores was intended to be part of the Arnold Rebellion that was going to shut down the original Westworld. She was intricate to the plan of Arnold. It seems, though, that she didn't pull through with that plan. So Dr. Ford still views her as a threat, has put her specifically on the farmer's rancher's daughter narrative where, he calls it her little loop, her little insignificant loop. And he's interrogating her almost, the sense that I get that he's like asking her, do you want to be the hero? Do you want to play the villain here? Are you looking to get out of your little narrative that I've designed for you? And she kind of plays along. She lies to him. I get the sense that Dr. Ford knew that she was lying to him.
He has to. Well, my question for you is this. Dolores is lying to everyone. How do we know she's not lying to us as the viewer? We're taking her at her word for what her intentions are or what she's seeing or her interpretation. And again, I don't want to go back to the reliable narrator, but I think she's lying to us as well.
So you think the whole, at the end of the conversation with Dr. Ford leaves, she says, don't worry, I didn't tell him anything.
Yeah, we're going to get to it a little bit later, I think, here, talking about the origins of her hallucinations. And
okay.
I can see her being just a mechanism. She's just something to push the plot along. If you're in Vegas and you have the whale, which the Man in Black is, or Teddy and Logan, or Logan and William they're in there for not a pleasure trip. It makes sense that Delos would know, Dr. Ford would know that these two reps are in for some kind of an information gathering. So wouldn't you put a special asset that you have, Dolores, with a brand new special narrative to give them the high-end customized trip of AI having an awakening? That would be a perfect specialty trip.
So I went off on a guy on Twitter. I think he was like the Nerdy Panda, I think it was his handle. And I went off on him because he says in the scene where Dolores, cowboys up, gets her cowboy hat, holsters that pistol and rocks and rolls. And he says, oh, yeah, sexy Dolores. And I go, sexy Dolores. And so I called him. I was like, hey, you're more like the creepy panda, right? And he's like, what's creepy about that? He goes, I'm just human. And I'm just calling what I see, you know? My point was, you didn't look at that situation and go, oh, she's the empowered Dolores or the ass-kicking Dolores or the liberated Dolores, right? She's the sexy Dolores. Why? Because the way she looks, the fact that she was naive and moon-faced and wide-eyed and just this quaint little country girl, and then all of a sudden she armed up, right? Think about the perception there and what impact that has on the audience, right? So the audience is rooting for her. Why? Part of it's because of the way she looks, because of her backstory, because of her mannerisms, right? If she looked different, if she looked like Armistice, for instance, this wouldn't be exciting at all for anybody. And so, again, if you want to get, and here comes that term, meta, we can really be looking at that as a statement on you know, the way that the audience is being manipulated to pull for a character, and her activities might get increasingly distasteful, and we'll probably have more of an appetite for it. She could go on a murdering spree, which she does. She kills multiple people, and we're just like, yeah, all right, Dolores. Like, everyone's really excited about it. So, you know, again, I'm hoping that sort of a thing is taken into account in the show, and that would give me a lot more faith in where it's going.
Yeah, there is no other host that could have gotten William this far out into the park. You couldn't drag him out with an obvious narrative. You know, Clementine couldn't get him into bed. You needed a subtle narrative to pull him this far, and that's exactly what Dolores has been. She's been that perfect muse.
So, Big D, you talked about the hallucinations that Dolores is having. That's the next topic I wanted to talk about here. So we know now that the voices that Dolores is hearing in her head are, in fact, the voices of Arnold. We know that Dolores has been seeing Bernard in dreams. In this episode, Dolores is freaking out more and more. We're seeing that she's seen herself. In the Dia de la Muerta parade specifically, she sees herself. She goes, chases after her. All the other hosts we think they're hosts, surround her, and we hear the voice of Dr. Arnold, and that places her in a dreamlike state where then she's down below naked with Dr. Ford. Did they really pull Dolores out of the park, or did Dr. Ford remote in somehow? Is this a mechanism by which technicians like Dr. Ford can do with hosts?
We've asked this before, whether or not, you know, Bernard was actually meeting. I feel that the answer is yes. That whenever there is an interaction that is supposedly in a dream, when Dr. Ford says, you know, do you know where we are? Whenever there's a solo one-on-one meeting, I have to believe it's similar to remoting in. The difference in the two sessions and what we see is Dr. Ford, it's more traditional with the nude host. Bernard, who's more accepting and wants them clothed. When we see his dream, they're clothed. I believe they're both remote sessions. As we were watching the parade, it was different than the interactions or the flashbacks we had seen Dolores have on the farm, where she could see what was going to happen with Rebus's gang. There, she clearly identified it. The parade Dolores and the Dolores we see later at the tarot card reading, it's something she hasn't experienced before. Is it possible that she's receiving the narrative as she's going on? That, you know, Dr. Ford or the park is trying to steer William and Logan's journey to a specific destination, and thus they're updating Dolores mid-route. Is that reasonable to think?
I mean, to me, it makes perfect sense because we see her narrative change. We see her plan of course of action change. When she's at the in the orgies happening and she's just sitting on the couch, she's essentially inactive. She's got all the stimulation but is taking no action, right? She's not going and looking around. She's not reacting in any particularly positive or negative way. She's just kind of chilling there, right? And then she goes off and, you know, on her own when William's got his back turned, and she goes doing a little exploring. Of course, like, why would she go exploring? What does she find there? She happens to walk into a room where there is a tarot card reader. And in that case, then again, she sees herself, again, another sort of a glitch, and then suddenly knows, you know, exactly what she's got to do. Then comes out and warns William about a plot point, takes action, saves him, and then what do? She says, we've got to go. We got to find that train. It's our only way out of here. It's the only way we're going to survive. How does she know there's a train coming? How does she know that's the only way they're going to survive? the only way that she can know any of that stuff is, as you said, Dick, they're feeding it to her.
Yeah, there's no explanation that for her to have that intimate knowledge of the layout or the train schedule. There's no other reasonable answer.
Well, let me ask you this, guys. So far, the hallucinations that we see Dolores having with the church steeples, with things that with the gravesite and her kind of standing over it. So far, we're led to believe that these are hallucinations that she's remembering from her past. If, D, your theory is correct, could this be possible flash forwards of the new narrative that Dr. Ford has implanted in her head, and she's seeing what's about to happen to her in the future? Because we know that the steeple somehow has to do with Ford's new narrative. And if in fact that she's just this pawn in Dr. Ford's game, she could be flash forwarding to what's coming up.
It calls into question everything. The little girl in the well telling her, "Do you remember?" That could be just another false memory. I think it calls into question every single fact that we say. Now, I truly believe that Dolores thinks that she is a host who's having some awakening. Whether that's genuine or not, it's in question. To truly make this a one-off specialized experience, which would keep, someone, a special VIP guest like Logan or, William involved, this would be a kick-ass one to believe she's different. William tells Logan multiple times, don't say that in front of her. You're hurting her feelings. She's different. She's different. They're giving William everything he needs to make this a kick-ass vacation. And Dolores might not even realize she's doing it.
One of the things that you brought up during our show prep notes is the map of the maze. Originally, in the Man in Black timeline, in his his story arc, he had to go and search out, and he had to kill Kissy, he had to scalp Kissy to find this, and it looked like it was a hidden thing that he then had to go to Lawrence and show to the kid, and it seemed like this key that was unlocking the mystery. Now, it seems as if the maze is everywhere. It's on tarot cards. It's on coffins. It's painted on walls. People with golden dicks are just writing it everywhere. Why? Why are we seeing the golden maze now everywhere?
As we know, HBO, masters of merchandising. And they realized that, with Game of Thrones, you had a perfect setup. You got all these different houses. You can make T-shirts, mugs, shot glasses, whatever you want. Westworld, they're like, oh, crap, what are we going to sell? Like, you can't have giant dick host dolls to sell. Nobody wants raped Dolores dolls. But here you got something. You put that stamp on anything. You got erasers, coasters, mouse pads, jackets, T-shirts. That's the whole reason it's around. They just wanted something they could sell.
What if this is the other thing? Let's say that the William Logan timeline's in the past. The map is more, instead of a map to freedom, this could be the V for victory, or this could be the sign of the rebellion. This was the robot's actual tag for we're going to be free, and they were using it as a call to arms for other hosts. If this is 30 years in the past and that's more prevalent, the rebellion happens, it's squashed, whatever. Young Logan and young William have seen this symbol around the park. The rebellion squashed, 30 years go forward. He's still coming to the park. He's searching for this deep meaning of what this maze is. I think it would be so ironic if the maze was nothing. At Disney, one of the big things they have for the huge, Disneyana, the Disney freaks, is called Hidden Mickeys. And they design throughout the parks and restaurants the Mickey head and the two ears. And it's this big mythology where they do books on Amazon. You can go search for the secrets of the hidden Mickey. And people go looking for these things, and it's nothing. It would be ironic at the end if the Man in Black gets to it, and they're like, oh, yeah, that was an old storyline that we had that you just picked up on, and there was never anything to it.
Well, I mean, Ford does ask him when the Man in Black asks in this episode, "How am I doing?" And Ford's like, "Well, how are you doing at what? Like, what are you doing?" It's a great question. He's trying to gauge his progress, but no one seems to know even what he's attempting to do. At one point, he says he's there to free people. At other points, he's there to explore the wisdom of ancient cultures. At other points, he's just there to flat out win. The important thing with the Man in Black, though, is that he does seem during all this, he's having more fun than anybody else, and that's still what makes him the most charming character.
Yeah, I agree with you. One last thing before we wrap up the Dolores conversation is we learn that one of the hosts, in fact, the Woodcutter actually, Elsie discovers has a device in his arm that she pulls and discovers it's a laser-guided GPS signal that is communicating with some sort of satellite up in space and seems to be stealing secrets from Westworld. During one of Dolores' freakouts, we talked about this on the Instacast, she looks down at her arm when she's in the tarot reader's office or wherever in the Caligula-style orgy. She pulls at her arm. It looks like she's pulling out the antenna of the same device.
No, we discussed this before. You're wrong. The fortune teller says you're pulling at your thread. She mentions it, that you're pulling at the thread of your existence. And what comes out of her is a actual piece of thread that she starts to pull and unwind. This is not any mechanical device. She's talking about the fabric of her being.
One thing to think about is if you do not subscribe to the multiple timelines theory, if this is a single timeline, that there could be a shared consciousness where this thing getting pulled out of the woodcutter is triggering some sort of a reaction out of Dolores, right? But I tend to agree with Dick that I think that this is it's a hallucination, it's a metaphor, right? It's a message, and she's just imagining things. It's a dream state. It is oddly coincidental that the two things happen to be in the same place. I'd like to think that any show this caliber would not leave anything to coincidence, but at the same time, I just do not see that it being indicative of some sort of who would try to put a covert device inside potentially the most important host and the most often interacted with host in the entire park. I don't see it.
Yeah, I really hope that they haven't implanted a covert device in her arm, and that's why she's hearing all these things. I really hope that's not the situation, because if it is, we're going to lose. Jean's head's going to explode. So, talking about the covert mission that appears to be going on, guys, we asked the question on the Instacast. I'll ask you 24 hours later, do we like this plot device?
Initially, when we thought the Man in Black might be engaged in corporate espionage, I thought that gave him a purpose. I gave him a plot. At this point, though, it feels a little out of sorts in this story. What is this story about? Is this story about awakenings? Is this story about control and power? Is this story about history repeating? Is this story a biblical tale or a mythological tale? It could be a lot of things. Corporate espionage seems like it's coming way out of left field. It feels very out of place right now. But it does introduce an interesting plot point, though, where I think that we can agree there seems to be some sort of an inside job. Having the means and the tools to do this and then also cover it up does not seem like something just any guest could pull off.
Why do we assume it's corporate espionage? Communication, that's all we know. It's a communication device. Goes both ways. We're just assuming that it's feeding information out of the park. What if it's somebody's attempt to hack into the park? The park obviously is off on its own. You know, it's secluded from the network, we would believe. There's no way to get into it. If you wanted to get into the network, not just to export data, but to do some kind of control or to affect the entire operations, the Woodcutter would be perfect. He's your surrogate to get you onto the network or get you inside the park.
So what? So I guess what we're asking, though, then, if they're trying to get into the park, wouldn't you want to get into the park to then steal information out of the park?
No, if you're a competitor, you can do two things. You can either steal intellectual property or you can disrupt your competition's production. Either one works. If you're developing, if I'm Apple and you're Samsung, I can either copy your new designs and get your new schematics, or I can give you a defect that makes your phone blow up. Either one is equally effective. Maybe setting it on fire is a little bit better.
What I don't understand is the Man in Black seems to express that they're living in a world of plenty, right? He says that they're getting, fat on the teat of the world, essentially, that the people out there are they want for nothing, right? But they've now they lack purpose, and that's why they're there. If that's the case, is corporate espionage even a thing? I mean, is it necessary in a world where everyone has?
It could very well be anarchists. You look at the world we have right now. We live in a world that, going off of history is we don't want for water. We don't want for natural resources. We don't want for almost anything here as Americans. Yet there's still people out there looking to disrupt. You had the DNS attack 2 weeks ago. For what purpose? You're just being a dick. So I imagine in a world that is completely entitled and bountiful, you're going to have that same group of people who want to disrupt, theoretically, the playground of the rich and famous.
We know that Westworld is based off of what, guys? It's based off the original movie and book by Michael Crichton. And it seemed to have been a prelude for Jurassic Park. What did Jurassic Park have in its plot point as a major device? The whole reason the park shuts down and the dinosaurs escape. Who's the person that sets forth that motion?
It's your boy Nedry.
My boy Nedry. What's he doing? Yeah, it's a Linux system, guys. I know this. So he's stealing secrets, corporate espionage, inside job to steal to and give to a competitor. Occam's razor here, guys. So if it is, in fact, an inside job, who's the Nedry? Is it Teresa Collin, who was noticeably absent from this episode, and we know has illusions of we saw her have a very confrontational conversation, power lunch with Dr. Ford last year, or I'm sorry, last episode? Is it Lee Sizemore, or is it possibly Bernard?
What do you need to have somebody do something like that? You need a disgruntled employee. Nedry was a little pissed that his contract was, the lowest bid. Who's the only truly disgruntled employee?
Sizemore.
Bingo. He's just had Ford come in and shit all over his narrative. That's a perfect guy. If you wanted to reach out and get a mole inside the company, that's your man.
Can I ask this, though? Are there any happy workers at Westworld? I mean, other than the guy that's fucking corpses, there seems to be, everyone's got a bone to pick, right? Bernard's got his, demons. You got Teresa Cullen's very upset. Sizemore's upset. Ford's a lunatic. You've got, basically nobody's having a great time at Westworld.
Felix is. He's bringing the birds back to life. He's got a hobby.
I was gonna say Felix, and Sylvester seems to be having a pretty good time. He's eating ham sandwiches. He's going into the VR room with a pretty redhead. You even got Necroperv over there that's banging the host when they come down for. They seem like they really want this job. They need this job as screwed up as they are. I really like the idea of Felix, and this is the next point I wanted to talk about. The Felix, the Bird, and Maeve, they seem to be working on Maeve consistently. In addition, Felix seems like a character. He's kind of an altruistic person where he wants to do good. He wants to advance his career. He wants to bring back a little bird. He wants to go beyond being a butcher, a so-called butcher, and go into more of the narrative department. And as he's working on his little bird, he seems to have cracked the code. He looks back and he sees Maeve up and running. In future episodes, we see that Maeve may be controlling Felix and using Felix to change some of her programming. What do we think is going to happen with Maeve? And do we like what Maeve is doing? Almost kind of like a Bond. I tweeted out, it's like a James Bond infiltration that she's doing. She seems to be light years ahead of what Dolores is doing.
No, I like it. It's obviously intentional that she's figured out a way to wake herself up. So the text comment that she's back down there again, and they're amazed at how quick she's being shot, that it's not a normal thing. In the end, we see that she's been obviously doing some recon, and she's identified that Felix is the perfect candidate. He's not following the rules. He's trying to reincarnate the bird. Him and Sylvester, they're both kind of slackers a bit. If you wanted to find someone who you could control and get to change your programming, these two would be perfect candidates.
What I like about Maeve is that she is everything about a character that Dolores isn't, in the sense that if she's the hero, if she ends up being the hero or a hero in this story, she's an outsider in almost every way. She has an accent. She's a prostitute. So the audience at large does not want to see Maeve be the hero in all this, right? It's Dolores. She's blonde, blue-eyed. She's cute. She's innocent. She's the farm girl, She's all these things, and we want to see her stand up and triumph and be the tough guy here. But what I would love is if Dolores ends up either being a form of villain or a form of evil thing, and Maeve ends up being the force of good, the force of triumph in all of this. It would be some brilliant writing.
I think you're right on it there. Now, traditionally, the audience, they have us pulling for Dolores, like you said. But I don't find her nearly as likable as Maeve. Maeve's empowering. She's, we do also that movie podcast, Shat the Movies, and we did Pretty Woman. And it was comical to me that women found this as an empowering, chick flick. When it was the polar opposite. It was about a woman. She wasn't doing anything to make herself better. She needed to have a man to come in to take care of her. Maeve is the polar opposite. Maeve is she's the role model for young girls, not being a prostitute, but the fact that she's in a situation and she's going to take ownership and she's going to make it better. She's in control. She's rising up. In the end, I would love to see Maeve be the hero, and it would be a great, great juxtaposition if Dolores turned out to be the overall big bad, that she was somehow the force of evil throughout the park the whole time and just had us all fooled.
Gene, I believe you brought this up on one of the first two podcasts when you said you had female friends who were asking you, why are you watching Westworld? It has nothing to do. There's what's in it for the female viewers. If you look at the character of not just Dolores in The Awakening, but if you look at Maeve, you look at Elsie, these are strong female characters that have their shit together, that are doing, like, they're peeling back the onion that is the craziness of Westworld, right? You look at the guys, the characters, outside of the Man in Black and Ford, maybe Bernard, they're all buffoons. You can even say Bernard's a buffoon.
Yeah, Bernard is just Teresa's whore. So, I mean, like, you scratch that right there, too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I really want Maeve to be the hero, and God, I'm really crossing my fingers. I'm knocking on wood for that one. So the last thing I want to talk about, guys, before we end today is the conversation, the build-up, what we were waiting for. It finally happened. Man in Black, Dr. Ford sitting at a table together, going at it. It seems as if the Man in Black and Dr. Ford have some history here, guys. We talked a little bit about this on the podcast. After 24 hours of digesting this, what were some of the big things that you wanted to talk about this scene?
Well, I want to first bring up, how does Dr. Ford know that they're going to be in this cantina? He intercepts them. He's there waiting. He knows exactly where they're going to come. How did that happen? Does that lead you to believe that the young boy, when he strung up Lawrence, is somehow connected to him? How did he know to go out there and intercept them? And then what was the point of him intercepting them?
We asked this question on when we were first introduced to the little boy, and I think it's right. I think that the little boy is it's intended to be a younger version of Dr. Ford. I think Dr. Ford, and again, this is all speculation, I think Dr. Ford utilizes the little boy as his own little personal spy. When he wants to push someone towards a certain direction, he sends out the little boy. And I think that's what he did to kind of coax them along to the town. And I'm sure this is probably the only saloon or tavern in the town. So it would make sense that that's where they were going to be for the night.
So that's Varys's little birds from Game of Thrones?
Varys's little birds.
Looks like a little Dr. Ford. They both have the little walking stick.
Oh, it is. Oh, it's without a doubt. It's a little, I mean,
have you seen the comparison photos of a young Anthony Hopkins and this child? It's uncanny. If it was,
is it really?
If it was not intentional, I'm going to find them and post them. If it was unintentional, they just hit like bullseye. They had to have been out there casting for this.
Oh, no, it's absolutely intentional. I mean, I've said it before that I see him as like kind of the little, like, Ford does not trust a whole lot of people. And he doesn't, and again, he doesn't like to have his flaws seen. He doesn't like to acknowledge those flaws. He does not have a great deal of humility. This little boy allows him so much flexibility and the ability to bounce ideas off of him and the ability to store ideas, kind of like a notebook sort of thing. And also in the ability now to kind of keep eyes on things. It's a perfectly logical extension to say that this was a personal creation of his to mimic him in almost every way, except age. Who wants to be old?
There's a couple things that I wanted to discuss here, and I wanted to ask some questions that I got from this scene. Number one, there have been allusions. We've had people write in and ask about the comparisons of Westworld to Paradise Lost. And Paradise Lost is, the story of Lucifer and God. And in this scene, it seemed to me, at least, that this was a conversation between Lucifer and God, with Ford being the God omnipotent and Lucifer kind of being the fallen angel, where he's on a mission to release people from the grips of God, and wants them to have, break their bonds and go off and be their own individual beings, if you will. The dynamic between the two characters made it seem like that's what was happening. Did you get that same feeling as well?
I felt that Dr. Ford was out doing some intel. He doesn't seem clear on what the Man in Black's mission is. So either he's far advanced in this hunt for the maze that does exist, or Dr. Ford is like, what the hell's going on here? What's this dude running around killing tons of people on these secret missions? Look, I got to kind of figure out. He even asked him, he says, how am I doing? And Dr. Ford's like, well, what are you doing?
I brought this up at the Instacast. He said, you never could create a villain like myself. It seems as if Man in Black has intimate knowledge of Dr. Ford, to the fact to where he even knows his first name. And he said, he says a couple things that, I wonder if I were to cut you open, what you would look like. It seems as if he wants to know the final page to the story, as he puts it, which to me means he wants to unlock, he wants to kind of overthrow Dr. Ford, if you will. He wants to unravel Westworld. And that's what Lucifer was trying to do. He was trying to overthrow what he saw was a tyrannical ruler of heaven. He wanted to release and be in charge of.
The Man in Black could just be some overzealous weekend warrior paintball guy who's just running around and he's seeing some overall beautiful plan for everything. There might not be anything there, and I think that would be completely ironic, that he has spent 30 years chasing the mythology of something that was innocuous as a symbol on a casket.
One other question I wanted to ask you guys about this, and I asked it on the Instacast, but now looking back, there's a couple of things I wanted to show as proof points to my theory. When they're in the bar, the Man in Black first walks in. There's a man playing the piano. It's identified as Dr. Ford. Dr. Ford's playing the piano. Man in Black sits down, says, I wonder what you would look like if I were to cut you open. And then as Dr. Ford exits, he turns and points to the piano. Piano starts playing. We've seen this multiple times coming out of Dr. Ford. In the beginning of every episode, the opening credits, there's a host playing the piano. Hands move away. Piano keeps playing. Is this proof point, what we just witnessed with Dr. Ford playing the piano, pulling up, piano keeps playing when he points at it, the fact that Man in Black asked him, if I were to cut you open, what would I see? Is this proof, is this evidence that Dr. Ford is a host?
I don't know about proof. I mean, it definitely points in that direction. I got that sense. But again, I think this could be one of those things that's designed to throw us off. We have been called out by people through email, on Twitter, and I agree with this criticism of us as a podcast, is that we seem to see everything binary, right? That there's hosts and there's humans, and that's all that there can be. And I think that there's the possibility in this world that we've been given no indication that other things can't exist out there. In fact, we've been given very strong indication that other things can be out there, because the Man in Black again pointed out that there were these beautiful machines, and then there's something else that's flesh and bone and messy and cheap. And obviously there's humans. I shouldn't say obviously, but we can assume that there are normal humans. So there are these in-between things. There are different states of being that something can be. For instance, perhaps Dr. Ford is not is not a biological host like the other ones. Maybe he is pure machine, or perhaps he's human, or perhaps he's some sort of a hybrid therein. There's all sorts of things that can be going on. I think the mistake we'd be making is limiting ourselves into that idea. Obviously, he's got some control of his surroundings, which is very interesting. And when we talk about text, again, going back a second, we talked about text being able to interface with the hosts. Not so. There are two people who have demonstrated that they can interface remotely with the host, and that's Bernard and Dr. Ford, and that's it. So it's a stretch to say that anybody can. These two can. What makes them able to do so?
I agree. I think drawing a parallel to the piano in the beginning of the show would be too heavy-handed. have more faith in the writers than that.
Gene, what I hear you saying is Dr. Ford is basically RoboCop. He's half man, half machine, all cop.
And he loves to eat applesauce.
Drop it, creep. Thank you for not smoking. Listen, RoboCop 2.
Terrence
Fantastic.
Boddicker is bugging me.
I'd buy that for $1. Listen, guys, it was a heavy episode. I personally loved it. I know that there was some conjecture on Twitter about that we absolutely hated this. I loved it. Gene, you didn't like it. Big D, are you still somewhere in the middle, or are you coming to my side?
Even yesterday, I was okay with it. I just didn't like. I felt there was some disjointed tone, as if there had been multiple directors. But overall, today, watching it, not taking notes, I didn't see that as much. And I also picked up on something which answered one of you two's biggest knocks, where you asked about how the hell did they get the blood? How the hell did they get the blood back into Lawrence or back into Teddy?
Yes.
We see the exact same thing. They're pumping nitro into Slim. So they have the bag of the nitro with the tube, and they're stuck it in one of the bullet wounds, and they're squeezing it into the body.
So the man in black just happened to have a transfusion kit just sitting around?
No, he had that leather little satchel and a piece of hose. That's all you need. Teddy already had the gunshot.
It's just like siphoning gas out of an RV into your
Okay,
Camaro.
I think when we get together, we're going to try this. We're going to try it on Roger.
Big D, I'm going to go out there and say that during your years of service to this country, thank you for that, you're an American hero, you were not in any way involved as a combat medic or corpsman.
That's true.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
But it would have worked. I know that if somebody goes down with like heat stroke, one of the quickest way to hydrate them is an IV bag up the back door. If you put an IV bag and you put it actually rectally, it's the quickest way for your body to absorb fluids.
See, now that we can do.
I request everything rectally when I go and see my general practitioner. So thirsty. So, butt chugging, I believe is what they call it. They call that butt chugging. Yeah. It's popular in college and sororities. Guys, is there anything else we want to talk about this episode? It was chock full of revelations and new things, and I'm personally excited. Some of the upcoming weeks ahead that HBO has previewed with us just look amazing. I'm still excited for this, and we're going to be right there with you. But before we close the podcast, anything else we've missed that we want to talk about before we shut this down and wait for those emails to come in from our audience?
I did want to shout out to the Twitter follower who reposted Arby's Halloween photo with the Wonder Woman outfit and the onion ring. What was it? Anything in the world? The world is yours. What was it?
Yeah, anything in the world is possible, I think is, yeah. So if you listen to the Instacast, you'll understand what that means. Holes and Arby's. Big D, anything that you want to discuss before we close the pod?
No, again, I know a lot of people were upset with us, and don't give up on us that quick. We wouldn't give up on you. We get some crazy ass emails, and we don't turn our back on you. We support you. So, hey, if you don't like something we're doing, write us. We're friends. Let's all get in a conversation, and let's make this enjoyable together, peeps. All right?
I can't wait to see what Jez gets out of this episode. It's going to be terrifying.
That's exactly who I was thinking of, too.
I've already received Carrie's email, and it did not disappoint. So that is our deep dive Westworld podcast here at Shat on TV. Remember, we put out 3 pieces of content each week with our Instacast, our deep dive, and our Westworld Telegraph, where we answer all your theories and analysis and feedback. We record on Wednesdays, so get those emails in now. We release on Thursdays, and we do this all for you guys. This is all, we're independent podcasters. We don't have any sponsors, so this is just our time that we do on the goodness of our heart, and hopefully you get something out of it, and we can make a top 10 in iTunes. So iTunes, if you're listening, put us on a tweet.
We are top 10. Are you paying attention?
I know, but not according to iTunes. They put some. Listen, I'm sure it's a fine podcast, but they put out there, out west, which is copying our Westworld Telegraph. They've only released like 2 episodes, and they get a tweet by iTunes. There's something fishy here. We've got 13 episodes in the bag already. Look at it. Look at our iTunes feed. Anyway, you can find us on iTunes. You can find us on SoundCloud. You can find us on Stitcher. We're on YouTube. We're everywhere fine podcasts are found, so make sure you subscribe and download each week so that you get all of our content. If you want to join the conversation, email us. We're hosts at shatontv.com. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at shatontv. We're also on Facebook. Just search for us at shatontv. On behalf of Gene, on behalf of Big D, I'm the Raj, signing off for now, saying we'll see you next time here in Westworld.